The first thing I noticed when I walked through the front door was the silence. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that happens when people have been talking about you and suddenly stop. My stepfather was sitting in his recliner, arms crossed, watching me the way a landlord watches a tenant who's 3 months behind on rent. My stepbrother, Derek, leaned against the kitchen doorframe with a beer already in his hand, and it was barely 2 in the afternoon. My mother stood at the stove with her back to me, stirring something that didn't need stirring. She's here. Derek said, like he was announcing an inconvenience. I set my duffel bag down by the door. I'd driven 9 hours straight from Fort Bragg, through 2 states and 1 very bad thunderstorm. Because my mother had called me crying at midnight 3 weeks ago, saying the doctors had found something in her chest and she didn't want to face the appointments alone. I had put in for emergency family leave the next morning. I had not hesitated for a single second. That was the thing about being a combat medic. You don't ask whether someone deserves your help. You just go, "My name is Claire. I'm 28 years old. I have been serving in the United States Army for 6 years. The last 3 of which I spent as a 68 Whiskey. A combat medic deployed twice. Once to Eastern Europe, and once to a place I'm still not allowed to name on the internet. I have kept men alive in conditions that would make most people's nightmares look like a vacation. I have worked 22-hour shifts on 4 hours of sleep with blood on my boots and someone else's pain in my hands. I tell you this not to brag. I tell you this so you understand what it meant when I say that walking back into my mother's house, my stepfather's house, felt more threatening than anything I had ever faced in uniform. My mother's name is Linda. She married my stepfather, Ray. When I was 15, Ray came with Derek, who was 17 and already the kind of person who borrowed things without asking and returned them broken. I had spent 3 years in that house before I left for basic training. And in those 3 years, I had learned to keep my door locked, my valuables hidden, and my expectations low. Ray had never hit me. I want to be clear about that. He was not that kind of dangerous. He was the quieter kind, the kind who would say something just cutting enough to make you doubt yourself, then smile like he was joking if you reacted. The kind who would tell my mother, in front of me, that my college money would be wasted on a girl who couldn't even keep her room clean. The kind who looked at my Army enlistment paperwork and said, "Well, I guess that's one way to get someone else to pay for you." Derek had learned well from his father. I had learned to be somewhere else. But now my mother was sick, or possibly sick. The biopsy results hadn't come back yet, and she had asked me to come. And I was here, standing in the living room with my duffel bag at my feet, while the 2 of them looked at me like I was tracking mud on their carpet. "You look tired," my mother said finally, turning from the stove. She was thinner than I remembered. There were shadows under her eyes that scared me more than the doctor's words had. "Long drive," I said. "Well." Ray picked up the remote and turned the volume up on the TV. "Guest rooms made up. Try not to leave your stuff everywhere." I was not a guest. This had been my home for 3 years. My mother lived here. I picked up my bag and went down the hall. The first few days were manageable. I drove my mother to her appointments, sat in the waiting rooms with bad coffee and outdated magazines, held her hand when the nurses drew blood, and she looked away like she always had with needles. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. The mass was small, probably benign, but they wanted another scan in 2 weeks. My mother exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. I cooked dinner twice. I fixed the leaking faucet in the hallway bathroom that Ray had apparently been ignoring for 6 months. I stayed out of Derek's way, which mostly meant staying out of the kitchen between noon and whenever he finally went to bed. I thought maybe it would be okay. I thought maybe I had built this up in my memory into something bigger than it was. Then I came home from a grocery run on Thursday afternoon and found Derek wearing my patrol cap. I know that sounds small. I know that to someone who has never served. A hat is just a hat. But a patrol cap is not just a hat. It is part of a uniform that represents 6 years of my life. 2 deployments. More sacrifices than I have words for. You do not put on someone else's uniform like a costume. You do not wear it backwards in your own kitchen and laugh when they walk through the door. Oh, relax, Derek said when he saw my face. It was just sitting on the counter. It was in my room. I said, "Door was open." I held out my hand. He looked at me for a long moment with that smile, the one he'd learned from his father, and then he took it off and dropped it on the kitchen table instead of putting it in my hand. "It's just a hat. Soldier girl," he said. "Don't have a breakdown." I picked up my patrol cap, smoothed the brim, and walked back to my room. I locked the door behind me. I sat on the edge of the bed for a few minutes, breathing the way they'd taught us in combat stress training. And then I called my best friend from my unit, a woman named Sergeant Torres who had talked me through worse things than this. And I told her what had happened. "You want me to drive up there?" she said immediately. "No," I said. "I'm fine. Claire. I'm fine. My mom needs me here." There was a pause. "Okay. But you call me if anything else happens." Something else happened. 2 days later, on a Saturday night, Derek brought home 2 of his friends. I heard them come in around 10 loud, already drunk. The particular loudness of men who have decided they're the most important people in any room they enter. I was in the guest room reading. My mother had gone to bed early because the new medication made her tired. I should have stayed in my room. I know that now. I should have put my headphones in and waited for morning. But at 11:30, I heard a crash from the direction of the living room, and then my mother's voice confused, frightened, calling from the hallway. She had come out to see what the noise was. I was out of my room before I'd made a conscious decision to move. My mother was standing at the end of the hall in her bathrobe. And one of Derek's friends, a large man I didn't know, with a red face and the glassy eyes of someone who had been drinking since afternoon, was standing very close to her, laughing about something she clearly did not find funny. Derek was on the couch ignoring it. Ray was not home. Ray, I would later learn, had a standing Saturday night poker game at his friend's house. A fact nobody had thought to mention to me. "Hey," I said. The man turned. He looked me up and down the way men like that do. "This your sister," he said to Derek. "Stepsister," Derek said, without looking up from his phone. "She's got that look," the man said. "The uptight military look. She is military," Derek said. There was something in his voice, a kind of lazy contempt, like he was offering me up for something. "Think she's better than everyone because of it." I looked at my mother. "Mom? Go back to your room. Claire, please." She went. I stood there in the hallway, and I looked at Derek's friend, and I calculated the situation, the way I'd been trained to threat level. Exits. My own physical state. The number of people in the room, 3 of them, all larger than me, all drunk. Derek's other friend had stood up from the armchair he'd been in, and he was watching with the particular attention of someone hoping something interesting was about to happen. "You should probably call it a night," I said. I was talking to Derek more than anyone else. "My mom has a medical condition and she needs sleep." Derek finally put down his phone. He looked at me, and I saw it, that thing I'd been waiting for since I walked through the door. The thing underneath the smirk and the condescension. The thing that had been there for 13 years. Patient as a stone. "You know what your problem is, Claire," he said. "You come back here acting like you own the place. Like wearing that uniform makes you something special. Like we're all supposed to just rearrange our lives for you." "I'm here for my mother," I said. "You're here because you've got nowhere else to go on your leave or whatever." He stood up. He was taller than me by 8 inches. "And while you're under this roof, you don't give orders." "I'm not giving orders. I'm asking you to respect that your stepmother is sick and needs sleep. She's my dad's wife," he said. "Not yours." And then he stepped toward me, and I saw his hand come up. And I had a choice in that single second. The choice I'd trained for. The one where your body knows the answer before your mind does. I stepped back. I want you to understand why. Because this is the part that people always question. And I've learned to just say it plainly and let them think what they want. I stepped back because Derek was not an enemy combatant. He was a drunk, angry, deeply unhappy person who had learned a long time ago that the world owed him something it kept refusing to give him. And I knew the way you know things after enough training and enough deployments and enough time studying human behavior under pressure that if I defended myself the way I was capable of, somebody was going to the hospital. And it was probably going to be him. And the legal consequences of that would follow me for the rest of my career. I stepped back. I held up my hands. I said, I don't want to do this. That, apparently, looked like weakness. His friend, the one with the red face, moved first. He grabbed my left arm above the elbow and shoved me sideways into the hallway wall. My shoulder hit the corner of a picture frame. I felt the glass before I heard it. What happened next happened very fast. I am trained in combatives. I have a level 2 certification and I have practiced in conditions considerably more stressful than a suburban hallway in North Carolina. In the 3 seconds that followed, my body knew exactly what to do and was fully prepared to do it. I chose not to. I chose to go down. I covered my head, and I went down on the floor, and I did not fight back. Because the voice in my head, the voice that had kept me alive through 2 deployments, said not like this. Not here. Not with witnesses who will lie. I took 4 blows. 2 from the friend. 1 from Derek when I was already on the floor. And 1 that I am still not entirely sure came from Derek's shoe or the baseboard when I fell against it. My lip was split. There was something wrong with my left forearm, not broken. I'd know if it was broken. But badly bruised. Badly enough that I couldn't make a full fist for 2 weeks afterward. My mother was screaming from the end of the hall. They left. Just like that, they scared themselves with what they'd done. The way people like that always do. And they grabbed their jackets and they left. Derek included. He walked out of his own house and drove away with his drunk friends, rather than face what he'd done. I sat up on the floor of the hallway. My mother was on her knees next to me, crying, touching my face with both hands the way she used to when I was a little girl, and I'd fallen off my bike. Claire. Babe. Oh God. I'm okay. I said, You're bleeding. I know. Mom. Listen to me. He held her hands still. Are you okay? Did he touch you? No. No. I'm okay? She was shaking. Claire. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know why I need you to go get my phone from the nightstand. Can you do that? She could. I called the police. And then I called Sergeant Torres. Ray came home at midnight to find 2 patrol cars in his driveway. He was, to use the most accurate word available, furious. Not at Derek. At me. You called the cops on my son, he said, standing in the doorway. And his voice was the voice of a man who had never in his life been told that his son's behavior was his son's problem. Your son assaulted me in your hallway? I said. I was sitting at the kitchen table with an ice pack on my arm and a bandage on my lip that one of the officers had helped me with. Along with his friend. You probably provoked it. I looked at him. I looked at him for a long time. Your wife watched it happen. I said. He looked at my mother, who was sitting across from me. And I saw something move across his face. A calculation. Fast and ugly. And he said, Linda. You know how these things go? Derek's a hothead. But he hit her. Ray. My mother's voice was very quiet. He was already on the floor and he hit her. Silence. I'd like you to leave. My mother said, Linda, I'd like you to leave this house until I say otherwise. She was still quiet. She had the stillness of someone who has made a decision they're terrified of and has decided to make it anyway. I'd like you to go to your friend's house or a hotel or wherever you were tonight. And I'd like you to not come back until I call you. Ray left. I don't think either of us fully believed it until we heard his car back out of the driveway. Derek was arrested the following morning. His friend, the one who'd grabbed me first, was arrested that same evening. The responding officers had taken photographs of my arm and my face and written everything down with the kind of careful, thorough attention that I was grateful for and did not take for granted. I went to the hospital to have my arm x-rayed. My mother drove me, in the waiting room, while we were sitting under the flickering fluorescent lights with paper cups of terrible coffee. She said, "I should have made him leave years ago. Mom, I know why I didn't. I know all the reasons. They all seemed so real at the time." She looked at her hands. They weren't good enough. I didn't say anything. There was nothing to say that would have been useful. You've always been the strongest person in any room. She said, "Even when you were small. I used to worry about it. I thought being that strong would make you lonely." She looked at me. I think I was wrong. I thought about Torres, who had shown up at 8 in the morning with a bag of food from the diner down the road, without me asking. I thought about the 2 officers who had stayed an extra 20 minutes to make sure my mother had the right numbers to call. I thought about my CO back at Bragg, who had called me that morning after Torres apparently filled him in, and said, "You take whatever time you need. Specialist, we've got you. It doesn't," I said, "make you lonely." What I did not know, in those first days after, was that one of the responding officers had a brother who served, and the brother had mentioned it to someone in his unit, and that person had mentioned it in a group chat that had more members than I knew. I found out on a Wednesday morning, 9 days after the assault. When I was driving my mother to a follow-up appointment and my phone started making sounds, I didn't recognize the sounds of someone being talked about on the internet in real time. Sergeant Torres had posted about it. Not the details. Just the facts. Stripped clean combat medic. Our home to care for sick mother. Assaulted in the hallway by a stepbrother who faced no immediate consequences from his own father. She had asked, quietly, if anyone knew a good attorney in North Carolina. By noon, there were 47 responses. By end of day, there were responses from 2 JAG attorneys, a civilian lawyer who said she had handled similar cases and would do it pro bono, 3 veterans advocacy organizations, and a woman named Ruth who said she ran a support network for military families and asked for permission to share the post. Torres texted me, "Did you know about this?" I texted back, "I do now." The day of the preliminary hearing, I wore my service uniform. I want to be precise about this decision. I did not wear it to perform anything. I wore it because it was true. It was the most accurate representation of who I was and what I had spent 6 years becoming, and I was tired of being in spaces where the people who were supposed to know me kept choosing not to see me. My mother sat behind me. Torres sat next to her. The civilian attorney, a woman named Ms. Hartwell, who had the particular energy of someone who genuinely enjoys holding people accountable, sat beside me at the table. Derek sat across the room in a suit that didn't fit him quite right. Next to an attorney Ray had hired, not looking at me. Ray was not there. He and my mother were in a process I will not detail here because it is ongoing and it is hers, not mine. The hearing took 2.5 hours. Eyewitness testimony from my mother, photographic evidence, medical records. The responding officers, Ms. Hartwell, who asked her questions with the precision of a person who has done this many times and is not impressed by men who claim they don't remember what they did. Derek's attorney tried 3 different approaches. 2 of them required implying that I had, in some way, caused this. Ms. Hartwell objected to both, with a thoroughness that I found genuinely satisfying. Outside the courthouse afterward, there were people I didn't know. I don't mean a crowd. It wasn't dramatic in the way movies make things dramatic. It was maybe 15 people standing off to the side, a few of them in jackets with unit patches. I recognized a few in civilian clothes. One of them, an Olamanona Kane, had a Vietnam veteran pin on his lapel. They weren't holding signs. They weren't chanting. They were just standing there. In the cold. Because they knew someone who knew Torres, or had seen the post, or had their own reasons for wanting to be somewhere that meant something that day. When I came out of the courthouse, the man with the cane looked at me and nodded. I nodded back. It is such a small gesture. It contains so much. Derek took a plea deal 3 months later. I won't give the details because they're in public record if you need them. What I will say is that Ms. Hartwell described it as appropriately consequential with an expression that told me she had pushed for every single word of it. His friend, separately, faced his own proceedings. I was not required to be present for those. I was not present. My mother's scan came back clean. The mass was benign. The doctor said it with such practiced calm, like it was just information. And my mother grabbed my hand under the table and held on so hard I felt my fingers go numb and I did not pull away. I extended my leave by 2 more weeks. Not because anyone was in danger anymore, but because my mother had asked me to teach her how to cook the lemon chicken. I'd learned from a woman in our unit who was from Louisiana, and because the faucet in the hallway bathroom had started leaking again, and because some mornings she still woke up scared and it helped to have someone else in the house, I went back to Bragg in March. My CO shook my hand when I came back in. Not because it was protocol, because he wanted to. I have thought a lot. In the month since, about the moment in the hallway when I made the choice not to fight back. I have turned it over 100 times looking for regret, and I have not found any. Not because I think I was weak, because I know I wasn't. There is a kind of strength that the Army teaches you that has nothing to do with how hard you can hit. It is the strength of knowing exactly what you are capable of and choosing, in full awareness of that capability, to do the harder thing, to wait, to trust the process, to let the truth be the weapon. I am a combat medic. My whole job is knowing when to fight and when to hold still and let the body heal. I knew. When people ask me what I would do differently, and they do ask, usually in the comments I tell them the truth. I wouldn't change the moment in the hallway. I would change the years before it. I would have told my mother sooner what I saw in that house. I would have had the harder conversation earlier. When it was still just words, and hadn't yet become a hallway floor and a split lip and 2 officers in the driveway at midnight, I would have trusted her sooner to be as strong as she turned out to be. That's what I carry. Not the bruises. Those are long healed. What I carry is the knowledge that the people we protect deserve to know we see them. That saying the true thing, even when it's terrifying, is an act of care. My mother is doing well. She has a new apartment that she chose herself, with a kitchen window that gets the morning light. She has started going to a support group on Tuesday evenings. She calls me on Sundays, without fail, and we talk for exactly as long as we want to. Last month, she mailed me a care package. Inside was a jar of the spiced nuts she knows I like. A card from my aunt I hadn't spoken to in years. A photo of the 2 of us at my basic training graduation that I didn't know she still had. And a note in her handwriting that said, "I see you. I always did. I'm sorry it took me so long to show it. I have it folded in the breast pocket of my uniform jacket. Some mornings I don't even need to take it out. I just know it's there."